There is a man standing at the base of a mountain. He has been here before. He will be here again tomorrow and the day after that for as long as anyone can remember. At his feet is a boulder. Not enormous, not impossible to move, but heavy enough that lifting it costs him everything he has. He places his shoulder against it. He begins to push. This is Sisyphus. In the old story, the gods punished him for trying to outsmart death itself. His sentence was simple, and it was designed to be unbearable, not because the labor was too hard, but because it was pointless. Every time he neared the summit, the boulder slipped from his grip and rolled back down. He would have to start again, forever. No completion, no rest, no reason. That was the punishment, not the weight. The absence of meaning underneath the weight. What the rock actually is. Now look at your own life. You have a rock too, most people do. It has a different shape for each of us, but the weight is made of the same material. The things we cannot simply set down and walk away from. Your health, which asks for attention whether you feel like giving it or not. Money, which has to be earned again and again, no matter how much was earned yesterday. The people who depend on you, and the ones you depend on. Obligations that renew themselves the moment you finish them. You cannot retreat from these things into a cave. There is no version of an adult human life that opts out of the rock entirely. And here is the question almost everyone eventually asks themselves, usually somewhere around 3 a.m. Why am I carrying this? What is the point of pushing something that is only going to roll back down? It is not a dramatic question. It is a quiet one. But it is the question underneath most of what we call burnout, most of what we call emptiness, most of what people mean when they say they feel like they're just going through the motions. History has offered 2 very different answers. The first answer came from a French philosopher in the years after the Second World War, Albert Camus. Camus looked at Sisyphus and made an unusual move. He didn't try to rescue the story with a hidden meaning. He agreed that the situation was absurd, that there was no cosmic reason for the boulder, no justice waiting at the top of the mountain, no reward hidden in the task. And then he said something that surprised people. Push the rock anyway, not because it will amount to something, but because choosing to push it with full awareness that it means nothing is itself an act of freedom. The gods took away Sisyphus's purpose. They could not take away his choice. Camus imagined Sisyphus walking back down the mountain after each failure, and in that walk, in that brief moment before the labor begins again, finding something that almost resembles peace. Not because he has found meaning, because he has stopped looking for it and decided to act anyway. It is an elegant argument. Philosophically, it holds together. But sit with it for a moment, and a crack appears. What if you don't want to choose it? What if the absence of meaning doesn't feel like freedom? It feels like exactly what it is. An absence? Camus' answer asks you to manufacture will out of nothing, and for a lot of people, that request lands as more exhausting than the boulder itself. The story needed another voice. It got one from somewhere far darker than a philosopher's study. A little more than a decade after Camus published his essay, a psychiatrist named Viktor Frankl published a very different kind of book. Frankl had spent years in Nazi concentration camps. He watched people starve. He watched people die of exhaustion, of disease, of simple despair. And being a psychiatrist, even in that setting, he couldn't stop himself from observing a pattern. The people who survived were not necessarily the strongest, or the healthiest, or the luckiest. There was something else that separated them, something Frankl kept noticing again and again. The survivors tended to be the ones who had something waiting for them outside the wire, a person they were living for, a piece of work left unfinished, something that made the question, why go on, answerable, even in a place built to make it unanswerable. Frankl's conclusion was almost the opposite of Camus'. He didn't argue that meaning was absent and had to be invented through sheer will. He argued that meaning, when it is present, can carry a person past what their body alone should be able to endure. The rock doesn't get lighter, but the shoulders carrying it get stronger. Not from the boulder itself, but from what the boulder is being carried for. This is not just a wartime memoir claim. It has been tested since. In 2014, researchers Patrick Hill and Nicholas Turiano published a study using a large, long-running data set of American adults. They measured something simple: each person's sense of purpose in life. Then they followed those people for the next 14 years. The people who reported a strong sense of purpose lived longer than their peers. And this held true regardless of how psychologically well-adjusted or emotionally healthy they otherwise were. A sense of purpose functioned almost like a buffer against the risk of death itself, independent of whether the person's life looked from the outside like a happy one. Separately, a 2011 study led by Martin and colleagues looked at recovery from addiction. They found that a strong sense of purpose predicted lower rates of relapse. In the broader literature on recovering from hardship, illness, trauma, addiction, purpose shows up again and again as one of the forces that pushes people out the other side. None of this proves that meaning is magic. It proves something more specific and more useful, that the presence or absence of purpose has measurable consequences for how long people live and how well they recover from the hardest things that happen to them. Frankl noticed this in a concentration camp in the 1940s. It took researchers another 60 years to confirm it in a spreadsheet, but the finding held. So, how meaning is actually built? So, if meaning genuinely does this much, if it changes how much weight a person can carry, and for how long, the next question is the only one that matters. How do you actually get it? Frankl identified 3 sources. The first is commitment to a piece of work, a project, or a contribution you're making to something larger than yourself. The second is commitment to another person, someone you love, someone you're responsible for, someone whose well-being genuinely matters to you. The third is subtler, the freedom to choose your attitude towards suffering you cannot control. When circumstances take everything else away, this is the one thing that remains yours to decide. Here is the part almost everyone gets backwards. Meaning is not something you find by sitting still and searching for it. It's not waiting somewhere fully formed for you to discover the right question. Frankl's own language was precise about this. Meaning tends to arrive as a side effect of commitment, not as a prerequisite for it. That means the order most people expect is inverted. You don't find your purpose and then commit to something. You commit to something, often before you understand why, often before it feels like it means anything at all. And the meaning, if it comes, arrives later, usually well after the commitment has already cost you something. This is uncomfortable because it means there's no shortcut. A person who keeps searching for meaning without ever committing to anything long enough to earn it will very often keep searching forever. The searching itself, ironically, is what keeps the meaning out of reach. So picture Sisyphus one more time. Only now, imagine he has something Camus never gave him, and something the gods never intended him to have: a reason. Maybe it's someone waiting at the bottom of the mountain. Maybe it's the fact that this labor, however repetitive, is somehow in service of something he has chosen to care about. The boulder is exactly the same weight it always was. That part never changes. What changes is the man. His shoulders are stronger now, not because the task got easier, but because there is something underneath the effort that makes the effort worth continuing. The same push, the same mountain, a completely different experience of carrying it. That is what the research is actually describing underneath the statistics. Not that meaning removes the difficulty of being alive. It doesn't. Health will still falter, money will still have to be earned again. Relationships will still take work that never quite finishes. But a life organized around something, a piece of work, a person, a chosen response to what cannot be controlled, becomes a life capable of carrying weight that would otherwise be unbearable. The rock was never going to stop rolling back down. The only real question was always what you were pushing it for.